All right, welcome to my channel. My name is Ian. This is Ian Talks. And this channel is going to be just things I want to talk about that come to my mind on a daily basis. I don't know, we'll see the frequency. So today, right now, I want to talk about the penny. Okay, I think it's interesting that we're not hearing more about the fact that they are just stopping making the penny. Like, it makes sense, obviously, because if it costs 4 cents to make something that represents 1 cent, then of course, like, why are we still making it? But how is this not alarming to people? You know, it's, how do I say it? You know, it's, we always talk about inflation. You know, the media talks about inflation, money printing, fiat currencies, all this stuff. But it kind of just seemed to be nothing to anybody that the penny wasn't being made for obvious reasons. But for me, it's very alarming that we're stopping making this, and you've got all this other stuff out there. You know, nothing's really changed. All that's changed is the way that we're measuring money. I think I'm saying this right, that, you know, the goalposts keeps changing because they keep printing more money, or more credit gets created, or our government spends too much money and also has to create more bonds. And so it's, to me, just, it's a problem that all of a sudden the penny's just gone. And what are we going to do about this? There's nothing really that we can do about it. I follow the Federal Reserve a lot. I check in on them. I check their balance sheets, obviously following what they're saying, but who really cares what they're saying, because it seems to be unimportant. They follow lagging indicators. They must know what they're doing, because they're constantly trying to steer the economy in a certain way to, I really think that the Federal Reserve is here just to protect the government, really. You know, it's a lot of the central banks were brought about early 1900s, 1913, something like that. I find it interesting that all these central banks kind of popped up at the same time too. And then now all of other countries are in the same boat in terms of how much debt each government has. I haven't gone around and looked at balance sheets for a lot of other central banks, but I assume it's the same thing, that it's, you know, pretty high. Like the Federal Reserve for the United States has a balance sheet of, you know, 5.5 trillion now, I think, or 7. It either peaked at 9 or it peaked at 7. And they've been letting their assets just run off the balance sheet. So, you know, what does that mean? So in 2020, they bought a bunch of, probably all of the bad assets that the banks had. And it's kind of like they jumped on a grenade and it blew up. Well, they were able to maybe contain it for now, at least. So, you know, I haven't done any research before I started talking about this. I just thought it was interesting that we aren't making the penny. We made the penny for a long time at a loss, but why now? You know, what kind of shift does this signal? Except for it's just been an exponential inflationary downward spiral, upward spiral, however you want to say it. And so, now it's coming to a head. And there's somebody I just listened to recently. Maybe I'll find what he was talking about. It was nice to hear this guy lay out really what it means to, I think, exponentially have exponential growth. Or if they say 2% inflation per year, at some point there's going to be a doubling and then a doubling again. And so inherently, our monetary system will get to a hyperinflationary state. Like, it's not sustainable. It has to happen, and it kind of all starts with us getting off of the gold standard and being able to print money and do that 2%. Because, when it was the first 2%, it might have been, 10 or 20 years before it doubled. And then each time it doubles, it's going to be a little bit shorter, and that's that exponential graph. So, I wonder if we're out of 10-year cycles now for housing, let's say, where you have 10-year crash or 10-year up, then down, and then 10 years before you get to a peak. It's really at 15 now, but it probably was right at 10 with COVID happening. And it was kind of this excuse to just print a bunch of money and do a bunch of quantitative easing. So at this point, it feels like It'll be interesting to see how soon they go back to quantitative easing. It probably will be sooner now because it's just, there's no more tools. I don't know what else to say about the penny. I'm curious what you guys think about the penny stopping being made, but then nobody saying anything about it really. You know, it's just happening. And then at what point in our lifetime are they gonna stop making the nickel? Because now it's already, what, if it costs 4 cents to make a penny, then now we're almost at, the nickel's too expensive to be made. I guess you could make it out of cheaper metals, but then it might be easier to it might be easier to, you know, copy it. You know, I'm not really trying to preach right now. I'm just trying to understand. I'm curious what you guys would say and how we could elaborate on this, because it's, to me, a very big deal. You know, I'm sitting in my shop right now that I rent. I'm a contractor, manufacturer, business owner. I've been doing this for 10 years now. And I'm like a hobbyist, macroeconomist. Since 2020 is when I really started following it and trying to understand what's going on around me, you know, what money really means. You know, how do I charge in my business? When is it time to buy a home? You know, I wasn't able to buy a home because I was trying to consolidate my home and my business together. And I was not able to find that opportunity. And then later I really got more into the zoning, because I would find a house and then I would check the zoning and it wouldn't work. But then come to find out there's almost no zoning available in my area. So if I want to live at home and own a business from home, that's a wood shop specifically, then I really can't do it here. In the few spots that are available, there's nothing for sale, and it's such a small amount of the county. So I don't know where I'm going with that. Anyways, this is my first video on this channel. Let's talk more about the penny, because it's gone. All right, that's all I got. Thanks, guys.